Welcome everybody to the Division 3 August webinar. I think everyone is in from the waiting room and we're excited to be with you today. Happy 50th anniversary to everyone in Division 3 as we kick that off on August 6th. I'm Allie Spungen, Associate Director, Division 3, and today I am joined by Eric Hartung and Bill Regan to give you updates on SAAC, Management Council, and President's Council. We just wrapped these meetings up in July and last week for President's Council, so look forward to the next half hour with you all today. So some reminders before we move forward with our presentation. Please make sure to use the Q&A function if you have any questions. This can be found at the top of your screen. Do not use the raise hands feature. We cannot disable that. So please use the Q&A function for any questions you may have throughout today's presentation. You will also find this PowerPoint and recording on ncaa.org, and a link to that recording will be emailed out to all participants at that time. So without further ado, we'll get started with the August webinar. Our agenda for today is a Student Athlete Advisory Committee updates, working groups, and our joint meeting with Management Council. You'll also hear Management Council updates, championship updates, an update from our athletic trainer working group, some info about our 2024 convention, federated playing rules, mental health hardship waiver, name, image, and likeness as well. And then we'll conclude today with President's Council updates on our philosophy statement review, congressional engagement, financial and risk management working group, gender equity progress report, post-eligibility and injury insurance, Sports Science Institute updates, and surely not last, our Division 3 50th anniversary. So I will kick it off with our SAAC updates. Division 3 SAAC primary and associate members met on July 15th and 16th here in Indianapolis. During the meeting, SAAC brainstormed a number of hot topics in collegiate athletics and decided to focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, as well as mental and physical health. And our third working group for this year will be Special Olympics as we head into our 13th year of that partnership. The DEI and J working group will provide education and best practices as well as some resources. So stay tuned on SAAC social media and other emails. Mental and physical health, the group's first focus will be on developing a one-pager or one-page document on how to have difficult conversations with administrators. You can look forward to that one-page resource early this fall, late fall from D3 SAC. And then, as I mentioned, Special Olympics will honor that partnership with Special Olympics by promoting it for all of our working groups to focus on that as a full committee priority. All SAC members have committed to focusing on planning and celebrating Special Olympics on campus, conference, and national level. Please continue to submit your Special Olympics stories, photos, and videos to d3specialolympics@ncaa.org. In 2022-23, more than 1,500 student athletes dedicated 5,600 hours to Special Olympics events throughout the year while raising over $22,000. So thank you to everyone that helped us meet that goal. SAC had a great joint meeting with Management Council. SAC hosted a roundtable discussion with our Management Council members during the joint meeting. The roundtable discussions focused on sportsmanship, game experiences, and how student athletes can help with poor sportsmanship. The second roundtable was centered around difficult conversations and helping develop best practices for our student athletes. During the joint meeting, the group discussed surrounding sportsmanship and game environment and those best practices. So stay tuned for more information as SAC works through that with their working groups. After the roundtables, both SAC and Management Council and NCAA staff took part in an amazing Special Olympics event we hosted at the NCAA Hall of Champions. We even had a new Special Olympics world champion join us for our fun event at the Hall of Champions. 25 Special Olympic athletes joined us for some fun activities from cornhole, giant Jenga to Connect Four, and of course we ended with a sweet treat of ice cream. So if you're interested to follow more about what D3 SAC is working on, please follow us at Twitter or X, whatever you might call it these days, at D3 SAC. And then we're also on Instagram at DIII SAC. So please follow along this next year through our SAC improvements in resources. So that's all to me. I will pass the virtual mic over to my colleague.
Thanks, Ellie Reagan. And as Ellie said, mentioned earlier, welcome and happy 50th anniversary. I'm going to start with some updates from championships. As you know, this past spring, April, May, there was a survey that was administered to the membership to gauge the membership's priorities in terms of potential enhancements to our Division III championships. After reviewing the results of that survey and committee discussions, championships has really narrowed its focus to 4 primary possible incentives or enhancements, rather. And I would underscore that these are not in any priority. They have just identified the ones they want to continue to evaluate. And those are increasing per diems for the existing travel parties, potentially increasing travel parties. Can they increase championship brackets? And potentially adding some additional flights in the earlier rounds of the championships to separate more highly ranked regional teams so they're not playing each other in the first, second round. The committee is now going to begin looking at the actual budget impacts and looking at the budget implications for these decisions and continue to seek membership feedback as well as feedback from our sports committees to really determine what is in the best interest for every sport and for all of our student athletes in general. I think everyone understands how important the championship experience is for our student athletes and for the Division III membership. So Katie, if you can move to the next slide. Additionally, championships recommended a change to the waiver deadlines for in-region opponent waivers. It used to be December 31st. Management Council approved this administrative regulation, a change to this administrative regulation to change those deadlines so they more in line with the differences in the sports seasons. And you can see those listed on the slide here. Another important topic for the Championships Committee is to continue to evaluate the use of a selection criteria database. There is a similar database being used now for ice hockey called Pairwise. And really what it is, it's a database that helps the committee with its selections of those teams that have not earned access to our championships through an AQ. So this is for those non-automatic qualifiers. The Championships Committee, as well as liaisons, have already gone out and started to have some educational sessions with sport committee chairs. They'll continue these educational sessions through the spring, and I think what the real hope is continue to seek feedback and input from RACs and sport committees to determine is this something that should be implemented for NCAA selections beginning with the 24-25 academic year. Next slide. Another important topic for our Division III institutions is our athletic trainers and the ability to hire and actually retain athletic trainers. So Division III athletic directors have asked the governance structure to take a look at this, and our management council responded by creating an athletic training working group. This working group had its initial meeting at the end of July. What that group did during that particular meeting was really to reaffirm its charge, the timeline, and begin to start looking at some initial data and determine what additional information they will need to continue its work. The hope is to have a recommendation no later than the 25 convention. Additionally, there was a stakeholder meeting with the NATA and other affiliated organizations. That stakeholder meeting was attended also by 3 representatives from each of the 3 divisions, as well as individuals from the governance staff and SSI. There really was an opportunity to meet with the NATA and to kind of hear their perspective on the state of athletic trainers and some of the research that they've conducted and kind of some of their findings. And in short summary, the findings have shown that just athletic trainers have many more options than they've had previously. So salaries become a big issue for them, work-life balance, as well as this issue of respect or autonomy and actually have a seating at the table when it comes to decisions that affect the athletic training staff and the health and safety of student athletes. So this working group will continue to meet on a regular basis, provide periodic updates to the Management Council, again, with the hope of trying to create some solutions that are specific for Division III that can be implemented by our Division III institutions. Convention. It's hard to believe we're already talking about our 24 convention, but this year that convention will be in Phoenix. Registration opens up on September 12th. Dates for that convention are January 10th through the 13th. And you'll see some key differences in programming. On Wednesday, January 10th, we'll have our association-wide educational sessions, which we've generally had. Well, you'll see the state of college sports and the award presentations and a welcome reception are actually going to occur that evening. On Thursday, again, association-wide session, Special Olympic activity, but you'll see the Woman of the Year presentation, our delegates reception, and a terrific event for Division III LGBTQ of the Year award for celebration. And then we'll have our issues forum as we generally do on Friday, January 12th. And then on the 13th will be the Division III business session. Next slide. The Convention Planning Subcommittee recommended some educational sessions for convention for Division III specifically, and these were endorsed by our management council. I'm sorry, wrong slide. Okay. The convention proposals. As you look, there are 3 convention proposals that are being recommended through the governance structure. One is the philosophy statement. I'm going to let Eric talk to you a little bit about that. The second is having stunt be recognized as emerging sport for women. And the final one is to amend sports sponsorship requirements for the sport of tennis. There's also one membership submitted proposal that has not received full sponsorship yet. And that one is to amend the current legislative cycle. It really is to provide greater flexibility in the amendment to the amendment phase, our deadline, just to allow greater autonomy and flexibility for amending a membership sponsored proposal. So next slide. Management Council also ratified the Division III process for adopting federated playing rules. As you know, coming out of our convention, the amendments to our Constitution, it was really important that the divisions have autonomy in adopting federal playing rules that were specific to the division. So the process that was adopted actually fits within the current process, but allows Division III to adopt playing rules that are consistent with its philosophy. And it also allows for more Division III voices to be involved in the specific process. So that process has actually been fully implemented, has actually been used for some potential rule changes that have been considered during this past summer. Next slide. Remember at the last year's convention, there was a resolution that was adopted by the membership that asked the governance structure to work collaboratively with the membership to consider implementing or developing criteria for a hardship waiver for student athletes who are suffering from mental health issues, related issues. So Management Council, based on a recommendation from Student Athlete Reinstatement, just gave their initial endorsement to the specific criteria, and those really mirror much the criteria that are currently in place for our medical hardship waivers. However, it does provide additional flexibility for the diagnosis of a mental hardship waiver. It doesn't have to be contemporaneous. It could happen actually after the end of the season, as long as it relates back to the student athlete's participation during the season. Student athlete reinstatement will consider to evaluate the criteria and really be looking at how should this be rolled out? How should this be implemented? The expectation is that this process will be fully implemented by the October Management Council meeting and really be applicable for student athletes for this academic year. And the last topic that I'll talk about is name, image, and likeness. Our Management Council continued to discuss what were the top issues our Division III institutions are currently facing in the space of name, image, and likeness. They talked about what were some important considerations for potential legislation that should be considered if Division III looks to adopt NLI legislation. Some things that were top of mind were public registry of NLI deals, agent certification, financial literacy. A lot of this has to do with protecting our student athletes. ILC, our Interpretations Legislation Committee, will continue to evaluate potential legislative concepts in the space of the name, image, and likeness. It will be reporting back to our councils at their October meeting. With that, Katie, I'll stop to see if there are any questions. If not, I will turn it over to my colleague, Eric Hartel.
There are no questions yet, Bill, so on to Eric.
Thanks, Katie. Hello, everyone. I've got some President's Council updates for you, and I'm going to start with the philosophy statement review. In August of last year, the President's Council tasked the Division III Strategic Planning and Finance Committee to consider the validity of each statement in the philosophy statement in relation to current and future policy and practice within the division. Committee tasked a working group. It was comprised of 7 members and to conduct the review. The working group dove into the history of the statement and then also sought feedback through a number of different avenues. We had a survey in November, another one in May, and then we had our discussions at the Issues Forum in January. Where we stand right now is that the President's Council has approved the revised statement for convention legislation. That revised statement, again, is the work of the Strategic Planning and Finance Committee, as approved by the Management Council and also approved by the President's Council. Both groups noted the proposed statement articulates the fundamental principles of the division while accounting for the elements contained in the NCAA Constitution. They felt that was an important step. The statement also addresses the balance between the role of the philosophy statement and the division's operating bylaws, identifying the tension and that relationship between the two. Both councils believe that the statement is a singular proposal and should be considered by the membership as it is being proposed. I have 3 slides on congressional engagement. Let me give you the backdrop first. The core threats facing the association and its institutions are consequences associated with an employment-based model for college athletes, the implications of state-by-state patchwork, legal governance, and the need for clear national standards to ensure a level playing field. Now, there is a distinct possibility that the current legal and political threats will have a broad impact. In fact, Division II and us in Division III may potentially be impacted by some, if not all of these. Whether it's the risks associated with an employment-based model for college athletes, or the difficulties of operating amid a patchwork of laws, it's incumbent on all of us to be versed on key issues and prepared to speak to them on our campuses, in our communities, and with our contacts in government. So what's the goal? The goal here is to work towards developing future federal legislation that, 1, governs the defined aspects of college sports, most notably in this case, name, image, and likeness. 2, codifies that student athletes are non-employees, their non-employment status, you might say. And 3, provides a safe harbor for future lawsuits. Now, there's been considerable activity. Next slide, please. There's been considerable activity here. So let's start right at the top there, congressional advocates. This is a group that has engaged the membership in efforts to provide education and to seek feedback on optimal ways to approach Congress and state legislators. The group is comprised of Division III presidents, President Council members, a commissioner, several directors of athletics, and members from our Student Athlete Advisory Committee. 2, you can see in the 3rd bullet a reference to bipartisan legislative drafts. These are absolutely a good initial step in the right direction. Why? Because 1, there is bipartisan support, and 2, that the authors understand and care about the issues facing student athletes, colleges, and universities. 3rd item on this slide I'd like you to pay attention to here is down in that very last bullet. The council also discussed the importance of the membership continuing to communicate and inform their members of Congress as to why these issues matter and why they should partner with the NCAA to address the threats facing college sports. Institutions may use the existing toolkit, which you can see referenced in the second bullet there, to assist in their mobilization efforts and congressional engagement. The Financial and Risk Management Working Group. This group is tasked to discuss the current higher education and athletics landscape and how it might impact financial planning and preparation for Division III. The charge of the group is to periodically review the landscape and the division's financial standing and advise the President's Council regarding opportunities, risks, and threats that confront the division. Now, the President's Council did receive an update just last week at their meeting, and they anticipate a request from the working group to approve retaining an outside third-party vendor to review the division's financial strengths and opportunities, and that would be for their October meeting. The working group also anticipates providing an update on its work at the 2024 convention. The Gender Equity Progress Report. In March of 2021, the NCAA retained Kaplan, Heckley, and Fink to examine all the NCAA championships in all three divisions in order to identify any gaps that need to be addressed, both qualitatively and quantitatively, to achieve gender equity. In 2022, the association retained an independent third party to conduct the initial assessment of the progress made based on those recommendations from the Kaplan report. That assessment was issued in July 2022. There's a lot more to come on this, and again, the councils did get a progress report at their latest meeting, and a lot more to come this fall. One of the big news items coming out of the Board of Governors meeting last week, which was passed on to the President's Council just the next day, and then widely available to the membership and the public at large, is the establishment of a post-eligibility injury insurance plan. You can see some notes right on the slide here. I'm just going to highlight a few things. So this will begin August 1, 2024, and this again was approved by the Board of Governors. This post-eligibility injury insurance program will be available to all student athletes at all member schools in Division I, II, and III. In the coming months, the national office will provide members with educational and other information and updates on the program implementation. So a lot more to come on the nuts and bolts of how this is going to be rolled out. And then the other important component here, the piece, is that the policy's annual premium is projected to be $26 million. It will have a $90,000 excess limit per injury with no deductible. There will also be limited coverage for mental health care related to documented injury, and the policy is secondary to other insurance policies. I understand that's a little bit more detail than you may be looking for right here, but I wanted to give you a taste of the type of details that will be coming to you, and a lot more in the coming months. The Sports Science Institute. First off, let's start with mental health best practices. The Competitive Safeguards and Medical Aspects of Sports Committee reviewed an initial draft of updates recommended by the Mental Health Advisory Group to the Mental Health Best Practices document. Those changes involve statements regarding NIL, social media, sports wagering, suicide contagion, on-campus programming, and virtual mental health. The committee plans to make its final recommendation in December for the Board of Governors consideration in January of 2024. And these changes will be in effect for 24-25. 2, the committee has provided its initial support for removing cannabis from the NCAA banned drug list and testing as part of the drug testing program at NCAA championships. The committee anticipates making a formal recommendation at its September 2023 meeting, which is coming up next month. And then finally on this slide, the Concussion Safety Advisory Group met in June to consider updates to the association's concussion safety protocol checklist. And the committee will consider those recommendations in September as well, with an anticipated effective date of this coming January 2024. And let's close where we started, and that's with the Division III 50th anniversary. And it says this program will launch. It has launched, and it began yesterday on the 6th to commemorate this and celebrate the 50th anniversary of the division. The campaign is going to be marked by significant moments in the division's past, such as first national champions. We'll also celebrate both current and former student athletes, recognize the relationship the division shares with Special Olympics. And there'll be a division-wide week of service later this year. There's going to be a lot more information there. And again, this is to commemorate the date that the NCAA members voted to reorganize into 3 divisions, and that took place in 1973. And I'll leave you with a little bit of trivia here. Division III started August 6th, 1973, with 240 member schools and conferences. And on November 10th of that year, 1973, Ashland University, that's Ashland, A-S-H-L-A-N-D University, became the first Division III national champion by winning the inaugural men's cross-country championship, which was hosted by Wheaton College in Illinois. Now, you may be thinking Ashland University, they're not Division III. You are correct. They left Division III for Division II in 1979, and they actually followed up that championship in 1973 with another one in 1974 in men's outdoor track. So a little bit of trivia there to end, but want to thank you all very much. Just as a reminder, this PowerPoint is going to be available on the Division III webinars page on ncaa.org later today.